let me give you a quick introduction.
Sure.
So, I want to thank everyone for coming out to the Temple College Library. We're trying to get a little bit more stuff involved with some programs and activities here, and so very excited to have Sean O'Neill here to present on beekeeping. Mia Wilson, who just popped her head in for a moment and popped back out, is our other librarian who helped set all of this stuff up. She's amazing. If you follow us on social media, she's the one responsible for our social media postings, and she does a great job on that. So, well, we've got some more people. Welcome. So, without further ado.
Hello. Sorry, I'm getting started a little early. I got excited. So anyway, I'm Sean. I'm a beekeeper by hobby, and I do software by trade. So if I get a little technical, I'm sorry. If I get a little scientific, also I'm sorry. I was a biology major in college. So that's kind of a little bit of what got me into this, but really what got me going, and I'll talk about all of these things as I go, but for me it was my garden sucked. And I thought, well, if I just stick some bees in there, they're pollinators, they'll do the thing, and sure enough, like, my garden just went crazy with bees. But then I got obsessed with bees instead of gardening, and now I'm like full in beekeeping mode. So I got started because of me, but then I kind of found out that I love it, and something that really I think stuck with me is it feels really connected to my roots of history. Like, turns out humans have been doing this forever, and my grandparents were all farmers, and I kind of live on a little farm now, and it makes me feel connected back to history a lot. So in a bit of my research about bees, this is an Einstein quote about why we need bees, like, that don't exist. We don't have plants because apparently plants love bees. They evolved together for their whole lives. I'll talk a bit about that. A couple questions to get us started. Will you get stung? Yeah, they're gonna get you. But the bee armor that I'll show off later is really good these days. If you're wearing all of your bee suit, they really can't get you. So when you first start out, you just armor up, and they just can't get through that cloth. Then you get a little more adventurous. You start taking your gloves off. You take a few hits. You realize it's actually not the end of the world. It swells up a little bit. You move on with life. Then you kind of start to like it. And they don't get you a lot. It's really if you're messing with them, they let you know. You learn from them. You're not going to go in there and just get swarmed by them because you're not stupid, right? Will it hurt? Yeah, a little bit. Will you get honey your first year? Maybe. The first year when you start out, they're using a lot of their energy to build up their hive, build up the wax, and that energy is not being turned into honey. So you don't really get to take a lot the first year, but after that, hopefully, you just have more than you know what to do with. Because one of the most precious resources as a beekeeper is the wax, and you get to keep it year to year. And the first year you don't have any. After that, you're just overflowing in wax, and it's like a jump start for all the bees, which do start multiplying. So as I mentioned, it's an ancient tradition. This is a cave painting from 10,000 years ago in Spain. That shows a crazy person climbing up a hill, reaching inside of a mountain, and pulling out bees. We've gotten better at it since then. There's a lot of technology that's come along that makes it a little bit less risky and a little bit more fun for the beekeeper and the bees. They would have had to kill the bees back then to pull the comb out. They would have been smoking the hive and just eradicating the whole thing. By the time of the Egyptians, we'd actually figured it out as humans. They had these clay pots that they would stack up 5 high, sometimes more, and then just hundreds of them in a row. And they figured out if you give bees a nice dark spot and some stuff nearby and maybe a little bit of comb inside one of there, they'll move in. And they would do this, and they were still in the destructive phase. They would have to kill all the bees to get their honey out, but they just mass production. They actually had a vizier of honey in Egyptian times whose whole job was keeping track of how the price of honey was doing versus other things and shipping it across the empire and giving enough to the lords and all that. It was a precious commodity. By medieval times, we had gotten even a little bit better at it. You can see the beginnings of the modern bee suit. And they kept bees in wicker baskets upside down called skeps. And you can see the inside of a skep there if you had it flipped upside down. They're building combs in kind of this whack pattern, and there's sticks inside to kind of give them some structure. But you still can't pull it apart and look at it and do what we would consider a proper inspection these days. So they were kind of just throwing them in the box, hoping for the best, and getting honey out. And back then it was pretty easy because there weren't as many modern pests, so they could just do that and get a bunch of honey. But in modern times, we have a very modular system for keeping honey. It was invented in the 1800s by a man named Reverend Langstroth. The hives you're probably used to are those white ones in the middle. They stack infinitely. Some people get like 8 stacks high full of honey, depending where they are. That's not what you'll get here in Texas. But the bottom the bottom box is where the queen hangs out and lays all her eggs. And then we put something in between the hives that keeps her down there called a queen excluder. And then the workers fill the top with honey just as the season goes on. And as beekeepers, that's what we're after. We want to get all that good honey out. The other nice thing about the queen excluder is it keeps the eggs and other stuff out of the honey, so we just pull these beautiful frames of just nothing but honey. We don't have bee legs and babies and stuff like that that we have to eradicate. But there are other styles of modern beehives. So this one here is called a top bar, and it's kind of a horizontal hive. So people with back issues may like this kind of hive because you don't have to lift as much, and you just go sideways out. So that's kind of a popular hive as well. And this one, they just kind of hang their comb down from these wooden slats that hang in the hive. And then all the way over there is a more industrial one from Europe called the Slovenian hive, where they actually drive these trucks around and they park them outside somebody's pasture and pollinate as a service. And then each one of those little colored boxes is a different colony of bees that shares the truck. So bees are considered a form of livestock and everywhere. So I think it's important that you kind of understand a little bit about the animal that you would be in charge of keeping. So part of that is understanding how they're different than pretty much any other animal that counts as livestock. So first of all, they have wings. You don't get that except with, fowl. But they've got 4 of them. So you may think they only have 2, but they've actually got 4 and they're linked together. They have little zippers that hold their wings together called hamuli, and they can separate them and hold them together and do all kinds of fancy stuff. They fly like helicopters, they can hover, they can go backwards, left, right. They're super, super agile little creatures, which I'm just endlessly fascinated by how they fly. There's a lot of detail on that. They've actually got 5 eyes. You think they've got those 2 big compound ones, which are actually made of all these little facets, and that's their primary eyes. They use those to find flowers. Their color is shifted. They don't see red, but they do see ultraviolet. So flowers actually have all these hidden little landing strips written in ultraviolet that are there for the bees that tell them this is where the nectar is, come on over here. Because they're actually in a symbiotic relationship with the flowers. The flowers make nectar to get the bees to come over. And the flowers are shaped for the bees or certain kinds of bees. So there's different bees that fit in different flowers that have different body shapes, different head shapes. We keep European honeybees, which fit in a lot of flowers, but there's all these native bees which fit in different flowers. So part of the eyes and all of that is them recognizing, oh, these are the sorts of flowers I fit inside, so they don't waste their time on the other ones. It's just this like kind of thieves' cant written secret language that they have going on if you're a D&D fan. Their legs are super cool too. They've got 6. They've got 2 in the front, which are kind of like hands. And then I think of them like little centaurs, half horse, half men. They've got 4 in the back that are kind of like their centaur horse legs that do the work. So the 2 middle ones are what they hold on to stuff with and they position themselves. The back ones help with that, but they also store the pollen. They're covered in this fur. And they have these little baskets involved on their hind legs that they can just fill with pollen, and they pack it in there. And if you've ever seen a bee, they've got these little fuzzy butts sometimes when they go flying around, and that's the pollen they're carrying around. And it's specifically because their legs have evolved to do that. It's not by accident that they've got the pollen on them. They want it to go home. It's protein for their babies, and then the nectar is the carbohydrate for their babies. But as a side effect, they're also spreading that pollen as they go flower to flower. Another interesting thing is they've made an agreement with the flowers. They stick to one flower type, each bee does. As an individual, it says, I'm a bluebonnet bee, and I go bluebonnet and bluebonnet and bluebonnet, and I fertilize those, and I get all their nectar. But then the same hive has a daisy bee. And part of that is how they've co-evolved together. They just have this mutual agreement that yes, we'll behave around each other. You give me the nectar, I'll make sure that pollen goes to your sisters, friends, whoever you're with. I don't know what flowers do. Communication with the bees is super interesting as well. They touch each other, they smell each other, they dance at each other, and they throw up in each other's mouths to talk. All of those are communication methods. So what you see right here is called the waggle dance, which you may have heard of, and that is how they dance to their sisters and say, this is where I have found some delicious food. And humans have spent so much time staring at bees that they've decoded the dance and can read it. And this one is saying that that way, about 1 kilometer away, is a really great patch of flowers. And depending on how many sisters are dancing the same dance and how intense the dance is and how many people are watching the dance, you may have noticed if you put a Coke can out and one bee finds that Coke can, 100 bees find that Coke can. And it's because they go home and say where it is directly. And they use the sun to orient, and based on which way they're facing in the hive, it's like go left or right of the sun, and how much they dance, it's how far away it is. And in the 50s, some guy sat around and just watched bees until he figured it out. So thanks to him, we know. Pheromones, they have several scent glands on their body, which they use to communicate different things to the hive, like we're pissed off, or we're hungry, or we don't have a queen, or we do have a queen, or it's time to move, or here's where home is. Like all of these scents are words that they have to each other that, again, humans have figured out which part of their body spits that scent out. And you can actually watch them as a beekeeper and see them do it sometimes. There's this specific pose they have where they stick their butts in the air and they wave their wings, and that means home's over here. And when you have shaken a bunch of bees out of the box, you start seeing them do that, and you recognize that they're calling to their sisters, come home. So that's just really fun to start learning how they talk to each other. The other thing about pheromones is you'll notice I have that smoker over there. The reason for that is because the pissed off pheromone, they can't smell it if there's smoke around. So when you're going to the hive, you get a little smoke, and the guards say they're angry, but nobody hears them call. So you don't get attacked nearly as fiercely. I've tried doing it without the smoke. They know you're there and they hate it. Even with the bee armor, it's like, there's so many bees around me, I have to get out of here. Versus you go with the smoker and it's like, oh, hello. And they just wave at you when you open the top. So, highly recommend. The throwing up in each other's mouths part's really interesting too. That's actually how they pass like community health around. So like based on, they walk up to each other and they link mouths and they spit in each other's mouths, and based on the taste they can tell, oh, we have a queen, or oh, somebody should be getting food right now, or oh, we need more pollen right now, or oh, we have babies or we don't. All of that is communicated based on the taste of that. And within an hour of losing the queen, that's spread all the way around the colony, and they know. And they start working furiously to get a new queen. So again, that is what then makes them behave as a superorganism. The whole colony actually has a consciousness based on this slow passive information around. And it knows things. It can recognize faces. Some people think they've done tests with beekeepers and non-beekeepers, and they seem to be a little less aggressive around the one they know, some would say. I've experienced that. They buzz my wife and they don't buzz me. I go out and have coffee with my bees every morning and they leave me alone. I don't know if it's smell or if it's face or something, but they have a knowledge. And a lot of the time, I think I know what I'm doing at the hive, and they know a whole lot better, and they do a different thing. So bees come in 3 flavors, European honeybees at least. And you're probably familiar with the queen, She is not in charge of the hive. She is very much at the will of the hive. She gets shuffled around by what you see around her called a retinue. And it's this rotating group of other workers that basically push her to where there are empty cells to lay in and give her a good spot, and they just kind of guide her around all day. They feed her a food called royal jelly, which they secrete from their heads. And if she poops, they pick it up and eat it. And she's the only one that poops in the hive. Everyone else goes outside. She just is one job only, and that is lay the eggs. Up to 1,500 to 2,000 a day. She goes on one mating flight in her whole life, and then just stays in the hive and does her work. And the workers are her daughters. They are all sisters, but they all have different dads. It's a little confusing. Well, a lot of different dads. She actually mates with like 20 different bees when she goes on her mating flight. Has a spermatheca, which holds it all for her whole lifetime. And every egg she lays, she can choose whether or not she's laying a girl or a boy. And each one has potentially a different father, but they're all the same mother. So these are all half-sisters in the hive. And if she chooses, she can also lay a male, which is a fairly worthless little guy. He's huge. He doesn't help at all. And all he does is he eats honey. Sometimes he doesn't even go get it himself. He begs it from his sisters and just trophallaxis gets it puked into his mouth. The girls are really doing all the work here. If you've ever seen a bee, it was probably a girl. The boy bees don't come look at flowers. You don't see them. They go out to these drone congregations, which are these spots where they all hang out, cruise for chicks. And they've got these huge eyes, and they can see them from literally a mile away, and it's a race. And they mate on the wing with the queen. It rips them asunder, and they've completed their purpose, and they die. Successfully, that is a drone's life. The queen, again, she gets like 20 incidents, and then she goes home. And then the workers, their existence is they come out and they go through this series of jobs. Their first job is to kind of clean up. They pick up around the hive, they drag stuff outside. Then they become nurses. They have these glands in their head which secrete royal jelly, which they feed to their babies. And they also will feed them some honey depending on the state of the baby. Then they move on and become guards and start watching the front maybe, or become foragers. Go out and do the flower thing. And then finally they become water foragers, which is the most dangerous job for a bee, is going to a water pool and frogs and who knows what else and try to get them. And eventually a worker will be out foraging and its wings just have become so tattered that it just can't fly anymore, and it crashes into the ground, and that's the end of the worker bee. Most of them either get eaten or fly themselves to death. They'll last about 6 weeks in the summertime. They just work and work and work until they can't work. Then, at the end of the summer, they start laying these super fatty winter worker bees that hang out all the way through the winter and keep the hive going through the winter, and then start up that next round of spring bees. So full life cycle of a bee: you get an egg. They look like a little teeny grain of rice. I cannot see them without my glasses. So I use a flashlight, and I can kind of see them when I'm doing an inspection. After 3 days, you get a larva, and you can see in this picture they've got this kind of milky pool that they're sitting in. They actually float in a pool of food, which is that royal jelly. And all larvae are fed royal jelly for the first 3 days. And whether or not they continue to be fed royal jelly is if they're going to be a queen or not. So if they're a queen, that's all they ever get fed for their whole life. And this same egg will turn into a queen or a worker, depending on whether they cut them off. And if they cut them off, they start going the worker route. If they get it, they go the queen route. And if they're a drone, they get the weak stuff. The other interesting thing is that they cannot poop in this stage because they're floating in their own food. So their body literally has not connected their butt to their ingut, and they can't poop in there. And then when they go to the next stage, they can start doing that. And then they just fill the cells, and the cells actually get dirty over time from the babies being laid in them and exfoliating and all that. They eventually then pop out as an adult. You can see the times they live. And then the final stage of the life cycle, I don't know if you've ever seen a bee swarm, but this is actually how the hive reproduces. As a hive, it's constantly laying eggs, and that is reproduction, but the hive itself is reproducing as well. And it actually splits itself in two every year and makes two beehives. So what happens is around spring, the bees start feeling like, oh, it's really crowded in here, it's time for us to reproduce. So the queen will start laying queen cells, which are baby queens. She'll lay like 10 queens all at once. And then she'll take half the workers when they're about to pop out and just leave. And that's what you see, which is the bee swarm. And they hang out in a bivouac, which is what that is called when they clump on something, somebody's eave, someone's window, everywhere you don't want them to be. You call someone like me, I come collect bees because I love free bees. They're a great place to get bees. If you see one of those, you shake them into a box, you take them home, you put them in a box with comb, and they become a beehive. Because what they're doing right there is they're looking for the perfect home. They all hang around the queen, and they send scouts out, and the scouts are going out and measuring holes they find. And they literally walk around and they get the volume, and then they come back and they do the bee dance again. And they say, this is where the home we should go to is, and the scouts are all like competing, and eventually they'll go check each other's out and they start agreeing. And honeybees actually are democratic, they vote. The scouts start voting, and based on how many have found the right spot, eventually the whole swarm gets up and moves over there and moves in and just blasts out honeycomb. They've all stocked themselves up before they left. They took as much honey as they could. We hate that as beekeepers. I'll talk about it in a bit, what we do about that. And they convert that honey into wax, and they start a new home with the old queen. Meanwhile, back at the old hive, those baby queens pop out. First one out, kills all her sisters. She is going to be the new queen, so she goes and just stabs all the queen cells and takes over that hive. She's got about half the workers, and that hive continues, hopefully. Sometimes they get like after swarms, and a couple swarms will pop out of a hive. So as beekeepers, we want to control the swarm. So we actually do an artificial swarm every spring. And from one beehive, we take two. We take half the hive, we put it in another hive. One of the hives makes a queen, hopefully. The other one has the old queen. They're both none the wiser. We have two beehives. So if you are a good steward of your bees, you can double your bees every year. Unfortunately, there are pests and things, and there's attrition, and we don't quite double every year, but you at least stay constant. It's been a bit of a space issue for me. All right, so this is what you would see during an inspection. So I'll talk a little bit about why we do inspections. The primary reason is to know if our hive is about to swarm on us. You can tell that a swarm is coming because you see special cells, which I don't have a picture of here, called queen cells, which look like a cup. They pop off the side of the hive, and you can kind of see them coming early and be like, ooh, this hive is making queens, and you can do an artificial split then, hopefully, if you're doing your inspections often enough and you catch it soon enough. If you don't catch it soon enough, they're gonna swarm, you just missed it. So during the spring, you want about a weekly inspection. Just get into your hives and look around, make sure they have food, make sure they have babies, which tells you they have a queen, and look and see if they're about to pop out on you. So these are the bits that you would normally see. So the honey they tend to put at the top. They have a consistent pattern they follow. They've been doing this for a long time. They do it the same way every time. They put their honey on top. Under that, they'll put a ring of pollen. And what you're looking for with the pollen is that it's multicolored, because that says they're going to lots of different flowers, means that they're getting a nice healthy macronutrient spread. If it's all one color, there's not much you could do about it, but it would at least tell you that they're maybe unhealthy, and you could supplement them with some additional sugar maybe to spice them up if you think that they're languishing because of it. But I've never had an issue. They're always just constantly doing what they do. They're bees. They go to all the flowers. So you're going to see pollen, hopefully. And then right next to the food stores, they keep their babies. And this actually shows the various stages of them. You have the teeny rice grains, which are the eggs. And then as you get in towards the center of the frame, they get older. So you've got the larva, the pupa, the cap pupa, and then some where they've actually popped out already down here. The reason you see that pattern is because when the queen goes to a new frame, and this is nice to know, she lays in a circle off in the middle. So the ones in the middle are the oldest, and then the ones around the edge are the youngest. So if you're looking at a hive, you don't have to like go hunting all around, be like, oh, does this frame have eggs? You can just say, I'm gonna look around the ring of the brood, and if I see eggs, that tells me I have a queen in my hive, which is what I care about, because if you don't have a queen, your hive is at risk. I don't actually have to see the queen because she's actually kind of hard to find, but if I see eggs, I know she was there at least 3 days ago. I can close it up and move on, and know that it's a healthy hive. This is a video of the retinue behavior. So one way to find your queen is to stick a marker on her. You can actually catch her and get a pen, and there's a coloring system, so each year is a different color. So I think this year is a new color, and I don't know what it is, I'm so sorry. But this year it was green, and you stick a little dot on her head, her back rather, and blow on it, it dries. The other way though is that you look for the retinue. The pack of bees, it's like a mosh pit, moving the queen around, and you can look for that when you're looking at your frames. The other thing that you can do to find your queen, because everyone wants to find their queen, is when you're going through and looking at all your frames, your first instinct is to hold it like this, but if you hold it this way and look over the top, you can see her butt, because she's got a big old booty. And she's moving, and you can actually spot her over the other ones like in a crowd. So I've had the most luck with that. There's my YouTube suggestions, I'm sorry. You can see I look at bee stuff though. And going. Alright, so I talked a little bit about the Lionsworth hive, so I'll go a little bit more in depth now. The real big thing to know about this is there's this thing called bee space. And that's what this guy really figured out in the 1850s, is that bees will build crazy comb unless you squeeze them into just the right space, which is anywhere between 5 and 10 millimeters. If you go bigger than that, they're gonna build comb across and build bridges, which makes it hard to pull your frames out. If you go too close, they won't build any comb in there. So he did a bunch of testing and figured out, okay, well, that's the one they like. And then he built a box that exactly sizes that way, and he standardized the heck out of it. And we still use the exact same measurements today. The boxes do come in a couple flavors. You can get a deep, a medium, or a shallow, and that's just how much height is on there. So if you are not into lifting, you might want to go shallows or mediums. I'm gonna have to get this off that mode. And if you are a fool like me and think that you're manly and you want to lift stuff, you get deeps and then realize, well, why did I get deeps? I should have at least gotten mediums. So I'm gonna say mediums are pretty great. The thing you don't want to do is mix your 8 or 10 frames, because that's another option. So you can have it in a 10 frame version or an 8 frame version. Those are not compatible. So the mediums and deeps and shallows are all compatible because they stack vertically. 8s and 10s do this, you can't stack them. So pick 8 or 10. I think 8's fine. I kind of wish I'd gone 8. I wish this would stop advancing in front of me, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll find what I changed. I did autoplay. That's it. Okay, there we go. This is how it all stacks together though. So at the bottom, you've got what's called a baseboard, bottom board. It's got a little landing zone for the bees and a little slit at the bottom where they can get in. And then there's this thing you can stick across the front, which I can just show you, called an introducer. So you can control how big that hole is. So it's got a little tiny hole here, and if you spin it, it's got this bigger hole, and if you take it off, it's just this big open hole. So when you first get your baby bees, you want the tiny hole because it's less space for them to protect. And then you start seeing traffic jam, and you go up to the medium, and eventually summertime comes, and you're like, let it go, and you just let the bees do their thing, and they're flying in and out all day, just doing their work. On top of that, I don't use this slotted rack thing, I don't know what it's for, but you stick a hive body on, and then as it gets full of bees, you just keep stacking. And then on top you put this cover, which has got this little metal anti-hail, anti-rain stuff going on, and an inner cover in between that gives it a little bit of ventilation. And that's it, it's simple, it's bees in a box. That is that and the smoker and some bee armor, and you're pretty much ready to rock the bees. They don't care if it's a polystyrene box or a wood box or a cedar box or a pine box. They want a space of a certain size that's got nice little spots for them to put comb. They're happy. They'll go on your wall of your house. So yeah, I mean, they're happy to have this. So I recommend going to, well, I don't know what you have up here, but down the end area we have the Bee Supply. They also do online ordering. Buy your boxes built is my opinion. You don't save a whole lot doing it DIY. I've tried, and they industrialize the heck out of it. You save like $1 doing it yourself. So just buy boxes pre-assembled if you can. They're square, they last, they're painted, and you just get the beekeeping. But if you want to be a woodworker, by all means, build your dovetails, put boxes together. There's measurements online. You can't do it. So the other tools you should have, you got the smoker, 100% required. A hive tool. You don't need all those hive tools. You just need a hive tool. I like this one with the little hook because I can use it on my frames when I'm pulling them out of the hive. I can kind of get them in here and use it to lift. So that's just the one I like. I actually bought a ton of them though because they're super cheap, and I just put one by all of my hives because I was always getting out there and like, walk back to the bee yard box and get them. So I just have a hanger on all my hives, and just one of these hangs on every hive, and it's just that one. I do have a bee bucket, which I use to lug stuff around, my flashlight and other things, smoker fuel, miscellaneous tools that you'll just collect over the years. Bucket seems to work really great when you're in a bee suit, easy to manipulate. PPE, so I definitely recommend at least a veil. Some people go out with nothing, they're crazy. The bees want to sting your face. And it sucks when they sting your face. I got one on the ear and I looked like Quasimodo. The thing I would recommend is, we live in Texas, y'all. So get a ventilated bee suit. Don't buy a cotton bee suit. I was an idiot and I was like, oh, the cheapest thing, yeah, Amazon. That's for northerners. This material, which you're welcome to check out, is it's like a hex pass through. They cannot sting through that. The wind goes right through it. It's wonderful. The other addition I've made, which is great, is I got a vest made of ice packs, and I keep it in my freezer.
Oh my.
And I go out and I get started on my inspection. I get all hot and sweaty, and then I go get my ice pack vest and I put that on underneath that, and I can go finish my inspection because it's hot. Gloves. As you start out, you'll want gloves. As you get more advanced, you'll probably want to drop the gloves. Without gloves, you have more feeling. You don't squish as many bees. You don't piss them off as much, actually, because you're able to be very specific when you're putting the frame back in. When you do have gloves, I found I'm dropping the frames in and my fingers stuck underneath the piece of wood, and then I'm like shaking it, the bees are angry. You can also go nitrile gloves, like those really thick meat preparation gloves that you see barbecue places. Those, they can still sting through it, but they won't as much, and it keeps your fingers from getting all sticky and gross, because beehives are a sticky place. I also use rubber boots just because they love ankles. So I'll actually tuck my pants over my rubber boots, and that keeps them from going into my boots and giving me spicy ankles. And then if you can get an EpiPen, I'm not allergic, but I feel like if somebody on my property got hit, and they were, I'd like to have one. So I found an expired one, it still works, I think. And I just keep that around. So if you can get a hold of one, they're not cheap, but you can go to an allergist and say you have a bee allergy, and they'll just maybe hook you up and just say you're a beekeeper even.
And there is a new version that they're coming out now with, I think that is inhaled.
Oh, really?
I think that's why.
That's good to know, because I
don't know if it's on the market yet,
Pulp
but.
Fiction through the sternum or something, you know. But,
It probably will be cheaper than an EpiPen. Too.
Probably, yeah. So this is a queen cell. That's what they look like. They look like a big peanut hanging off the side of a frame. And oops, I'm back.
So is the queen inside of that?
Yeah, the
formation?
queens actually grow vertically. The other ones grow horizontally at the side of and they get to grow upright. And they're much bigger than other bees, so they get more apartment space. And they also are just fed like obscene amounts of royal jelly in there. It's full. So, yeah, that's what you're looking for when you do a hive inspection. That tells you, oh no, they're about to leave me. The other things you're looking at are your food stores, seeing if they have nectar or stored honey. If they don't, you can supplement. You can feed them sugar water, and they're perfectly happy taking sugar water when there's a dearth. If they don't have pollen, you can supplement pollen as well, although I've not experienced that in Texas. There's always pollen around, it seems. But there's artificial pollen that you can buy and feed that to your bees. When you first get your bees, you're looking at wax production. You want to see how much of the box that they filled out. Does that mean I need to put another box on? I'll talk a little more about that in a sec. And then diseases. So as their steward, you're really there to keep them healthy. And there's a whole host of things that want to eat your bees, from fungi to other bugs. Wax moths love to come in and eat the wax and make their babies in the wax. So generally, the best defense is a good offense on that, and that's keeping your bees well fed. So if you're going down the list and you've hit the point of diseases and pests, you probably haven't been keeping track of the other stuff, like treating for the varroa mite, which is really important here in Texas, and then also just keeping your bees healthy and well fed. We'll head most of that off. So this is what it looks like when I feed my bees. I use a mason jar, inverted, with a couple holes, like teeny pinholes, drilled through the lid. And you would think this would just dump sugar all over, but physics, I wasn't in physics, I was in biology, but those guys say that this works, and it does. You turn the jar over, and the sugar stays inside. It's really weird. And then the bees can come up and suck it through the holes, and they will drain one of these things in a day sometimes. Sometimes, like, I can put them out in the morning, and in the afternoon they're empty. 1-to-1 sugar in the spring, and you don't even have to heat that up. You just get a kilogram of sugar, a liter of water, or whatever your preferred measuring system is. 1-to-1 by weight or volume, doesn't matter. They don't care if it's exactly 1-to-1. They just around there. You stir it up, slap it on top of the hive, they suck it down. It's that simple. In the summer, you shouldn't need to feed spring and summer, because that's when they're actually out gathering from flowers and turning the real nectar into honey, which is what we want. We don't want imperial honey from the sugar company. We want flower honey. And then in fall, if one of your hives is weak for whatever reason, you took too much honey, they just had a bad season, they had a bunch of pests, you can feed them super sugar syrup, and they'll basically just store that as if it were honey, and that'll get them through the winter. The reason your bees need honey in the winter is because they turn the honey into heat. So they will, in wintertime, they're not out foraging, they don't even really go outside to defecate, they just hang out inside, huddle around, and vibrate. They disconnect their wings, and the same muscle that makes them fly, they use to just buzz. And they sit there, and they suck down honey, and they buzz, and they suck down honey, and they buzz, and they keep that queen alive. And it's those extra fatty winter bees I was talking about, so they're ready to survive what they can. Here in Texas, they're fine. The cold here does not bother them. It's one day of cold, they don't care. And as the winter goes on, the hive gets lighter and lighter. If you lift it at the start of the fall, it should feel heavy. And as you go down the season, you can kind of just go lift the side of the hive up, and you'll feel them go through that sugar. Hopefully have a little bit left by the time spring starts, so that they can just jumpstart themselves. But if they don't, you throw that 1-to-1 sugar in spring, and that kind of like tricks them into thinking spring has sprung, and they start making babies like crazy. One caveat is if you do that too much, they really think it's happened, and they swarm, and you lose your bees, or half your bees. These are the things I was talking about that make your bees sad. The really bad one is the varroa destructor mite. You see 2 of them on this poor bee. They're a bug-sized mite that they get up under the armor of the bee, and they eat their fat cells basically and make them weak. And they don't kill them, but they are a vector for everything else. They're passing viruses between hives. They make the bees weaker because they're kind of sucking their energy out, and then all the other things then take your hive over. You start getting nasty things called sac brood and foul brood and nosema and these things that you'll want to worry about once you get through year one. You won't see them right away. And then little hive beetles move in, and then finally wax moths come in. They're like the vultures of the beehive. If you see wax moths, you're toast. You've already fallen prey to something else. But we do have some treatments for varroa. So every spring and fall, I treat my hives. I use something that is based on thymol. It's a natural organic acid. There's another one called oxalic acid, which you can do as like a drip into the hives. And these basically fumigate. They kill the mite. They don't quite kill the bees. The bees don't like it. So you don't want to overdo it or you'll kill your hive. It can definitely just piss a queen off and make her leave. But it's kind of a necessary evil. This didn't used to be a problem. In the 80s, 90s, this moved into the US. It came over from a different bee species from Asia, I believe. And it used to be you just put your bees in the yard and apparently you got infinite bees and infinite honey and you didn't have to worry. And now these things kill the heck out of bees all the time. So as much as it would be nice to say you could do treatment-free beekeeping, you kind of can't. These things have become endemic. There are species of bees that have been bred to groom and actually bite these off of their sisters. And those are great if you can get your whole hand on some hygienic bees. By all means do that, but I think you probably still do need to treat. They move between hives, they reproduce within the life cycle of the bee, so they're just stuck with us, unfortunately. All right, so now the fun stuff. How do you get bees? Because you guys don't want to get bees. So there's a couple ways that I've identified. I've sorted them by price and then the advanced one down there. So you can get a package of bees and you can order these online and they'll mail them to you, and you get in the mail a box of bees and it's got a queen, it's got a couple hundred workers, and you dump them into an empty box and hope they stay there. If you have drawn comb, this might be easier because they have that comb to work on and they'll hang out maybe. But if you're just starting out and you bought empty frames, you're probably not going to get away with this. So next step is a nucleus colony. A little more pricey. These will be anywhere from $180 to $250, maybe even $300. But you get 5 frames. The important thing is those frames come with brood, which is like an anchor for the bees. They smell the brood and they don't want to leave their babies. So you put these in a box with 5 empty frames, and they will stay in the box, and they will start filling out your 5 empty frames. When you get a nucleus colony, it's important to feed them. So you put them in the box, and you stick sugar water on, and you keep sticking sugar water on until they've filled that bottom box about 80%. And you stick another box on top. Same thing, let them fill that box up to about 80%. And then you can put a queen excluder on, and you can start stacking supers and see if you get any honey on that first year. You probably won't. I did. But if you're lucky, you live in a great spot, maybe you get honey. The even more expensive ways, you can buy a whole hive. You can get one of those that's 100% full of bees, and it's maybe $350, $400, $500 depending. I've never done it. They definitely sell them that way. A lot of those hives may be ones that were migratory hives. There's this whole industry of shipping bees across the USA, and they take bees from Florida every spring, they put them in semi-trucks, they send them to California, they fertilize the almonds in California, and then they have all these extra bees, and they're like, we'll sell them to people. And they sell those hives as full hives. So you can get them late summer sometimes as they're coming back from California. Nucleus colonies, though, you guys are in luck. It's the time to order them. This spring is when people are splitting their hives, and it's those split hives that they're selling to you as a nucleus colony. So the bees want to reproduce in spring. The bee people are getting lots of hives in spring. Now's the time to buy. So get your orders in. There are websites that you can go to. I don't know if there's a bee store here locally, but there's one an hour that way south, whichever way. And you get the best deals if you put orders in early. They start messing with the prices if you wait too long. My first year, I got obsessed with bees in May and found out I had to wait a whole year. So I spent a year just not having bees. So you guys, if you want to do it now. Don't miss out. The last thing you can do is catch bees. You probably don't want to do that yet, but free bees are free bees. You can actually put boxes out with old comb and a little bit of lemongrass. And if it's up in a tree, sometimes bees just move into it. And you take it down and move it to your apiary. So that's also a great option. So this is my big breakdown of what it actually will cost. It's fairly recently updated. I did it about this summer. So based on how DIY you go and which style of bee you buy, those are the ranges I'm talking about here. To start out though, you don't have to buy every single piece. You can start, obviously you need bees. You can get one deep box, 20 deep frames, a bottom board, an inner cover and a top, and a stand of some sort. And you don't need these other boxes right away. You just can kind of get them as you realize, oh, I have more bees. I need more boxes to the bee store. And do it ad hoc. I would though recommend starting with 2 hives, because you'll have something to compare against. So if something weird is happening in one of your hives and it's not happening in the other hive, you know it's something weird. Versus if you only have one, they're just doing bee stuff. You have no idea what's happening. So that's my number 1 tip, is if you can swing it, start with 2, so that you can kind of check yourself. These are some costs that are more, so this first one was to get a hive. It's like the one-time costs. These are things that you're gonna need on a more yearly basis. So per hive, you're looking at 10 to 20 bucks worth of sugar, especially when you're first putting in that nucleus. They're going to eat a lot of sugar. A more established hive, you may not need to feed it as much. Pollen substitute, totally optional. I bought some once and they loved it. I don't think they needed it. So maybe save your money on that. Varroa treatments though, I do think is 100% required. Per treatment's about $10 a hive, and you want to do a spring and a fall. You want to time your Varroa treatments around the honey flow, so you don't want to be treating and then getting a bunch of treated honey. You want to treat and then let it settle down, that they collect all their honey, and then you take the honey out, and then you treat them again. That way you're not getting weird organic acids in your honey and all that. There are also pesticides you can be using as well, so definitely don't want that in your honey. All of the Varroa treatments will come with instructions about timing and when it's safe to use around honey flows and all of that, so follow their instructions when you decide to get them. And then these are the things that are kind of ancillary. You don't need them per hive, this is just you. So I would over-index on your smoker, because it will last forever if you buy a good one. I would over-index on the bee suit, because if you buy the wrong bee suit, you're gonna hate yourself. Hive tools, buy a bunch. Buckets, I could never have enough buckets. I don't know why. Little flashlight. So I just picked up a USB chargeable one that's just so bright. It fits in my pocket, because when you're doing, when you're doing your inspection and you can't see like me and you're looking for the eggs, if you shine a flashlight in, it's a lot easier than trying to get the sun angle just right. That was always annoying me, like trying to get the sun like where it is, and then it's a cloudy day. So if I just bring a little flashlight and bring it in there, I can find my eggs, know I have it clean. And then Oops Paint is my pro tip for painting your hives. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, around the back of the paint, there's this shelf. It's all the returned paint. And you don't get to pick your color, but it's cheap. And one of those cans will paint all of your hives forever. So maybe you get a good color, I don't know. The bees don't care what color. They don't care what color you are. They don't care what color the hives are. There's some myth around, oh, you should use a white bee suit. You can get a pink one if you want. What they do care about is the attack pheromone. As they're stinging the suit, they're filling your suit full of, I hate this guy. And over time, it builds up. So wash your bee suit. And it will wash the pheromone off, and they will suddenly become less aggressive, like they've been doing. So grand total, $500 to $1,000 to get going. I'm probably way deeper, I know I am, but I'm obsessed. So I'm sorry if you become obsessed. All right, so this is how you actually get started. So, or at least the path I took. I joined my local bee club. Again, I don't know if there's a Taylor Bee Club, but the Williamson County Area Beekeepers Association is happy to accept people from an hour away. I'm actually Leander. And I drive Cass County lines and I go there and I'm the vice president of the Bee Club for some reason. So I'm a little partial to ours, that's our website. We also, if you're a member, help you buy bees. So we have a yearly bee buy where we get a trailer and a very big truck and we go to Louisiana and we come back with 300 nukes and we sell them to members at cost basically. So you can get a nuke for $180. Our membership fee is $25 a year. I think the limit's like 4. And that's how I get mine, how I got started myself. Really great service to the members. The other really great service though is that we meet monthly and we have Bee 101 every single meeting for people that haven't ever bee kept, following along with the seasons as we go. So it's like scoped into, okay, everyone's got their nukes. Let's talk about installing our nukes. Okay, everybody's a month in. Let's talk about what we should be seeing together. And then as you advance through the club, we also do 201s where we talk about things like starting the Master Beekeeper program or other nerdy things about all the bee pests that are coming to get us, things like that. And then finally, if you can find a mentor, someone nearby who is also a beekeeper, really helps a lot because you have somebody that you can call and say, I'm seeing this, I don't know what's happening, can you come look, can you help me install this nuke? And then furthermore, when you get going, if you can be a mentor and pass it on, that's also great. So learn by teaching is always my motto. So with that said, that's my spiel, but I've got 15 minutes if you guys have questions about how to get started or stuff I've said that I could talk more about. I could literally keep going. Yes?
I'm wondering, what do you do with the honey?
What do I do while I eat it?
Really, I mean, is there like a surplus?
Yeah. So my buddy, his parents run a coffee shop and they'll buy the honey. But you can do farmers markets if you have a really big, not even really big, 8 hives, you could be farmers marketing, I'm sure. There's also the wax products that come out of the hive. You get a surplus of wax. You get, if you want, you can collect pollen. You can put little pollen traps in for a couple days at a time and it knocks it off their legs, steals it from their babies a little bit, but some people like that as a health food. There's also economic opportunity as renting your hives out to people that want ag exemptions. So that's actually something I'm starting up this year. Is I wanted more apiary space, and it turns out people will pay me for the pleasure. So I can go stick a couple hives on someone's land, and they win because they get lower taxes, and I win because they pay me a little bit, and I get to keep all the honey.
How much space do you need?
You can do it in any amount of space. The bees will not stay in your property line. I believe law considers them God's bees as soon as they've left the hive. So you're not actually liable supposedly for what they do, although there have been some recent cases where maybe that's not being held up. But yeah, you can have any amount of property. People do it on the roof of apartments in New York. They will range up to 5 miles in a circle around your house, looking for patches of flowers. They'll find people's pools to get their water, so it's nice to put a water source that you prefer. They like it dirty. If it's too clean, they'll leave it alone. So what I do is I have a little bird bath that I dump my smoker fuel in, and I just put the hose on sometimes, and they love it. That's where they get their water. Yeah.
How do you extract the honey?
So the process for that, I can talk a little bit about the queen excluder, show you guys how that works. So I mentioned that the queen's got a big old booty. There's this thing, which you guys can pass around, which she cannot fit through, but the workers can fit through that. So you put this wherever you want to cut her off. So usually 1 to 2 deep boxes on the bottom, mediums if you're using mediums. And then everything above that, only the workers can go to, and only honeys can be in there. So come honey time, there's a little trap you can put on that's similar to that, that's a one-way. And all the bees can only come out of your honey boxes. And basically you just end up with empty honey boxes after a bit because they kind of filter out, and then you just take them. And then the frames themselves, you slice the caps off the honey, and you put them inside a big old centrifuge is the ideal way. And you crank the top, or if you're really fancy, you've got one that you press a button and it spins the heck out of them. And the honey just flies out into the sides of this big bucket, comes down, there's a little spigot on the bottom, and you filter it, you've got honey. Some people pasteurize their honey, and Some people don't. I think unpasteurized probably is gonna sell better if you're looking to sell it. Unfiltered is gonna sell better. Some people kind of like the aesthetic of a bee leg here or there. You can throw it through a coarse filter and knock a little bit of that out. Some people also sell their honey as whole combs. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a very expensive way to sell your honey as a beekeeper because again, that wax is like gold to you. But you can actually build frames that don't have the normal plastic backing in them and are just an empty square. If you guys want to pass one of these around. Oh, I have one with wax on it too. You can build one that does not have that backing on it. This is a used frame. And you can cut it out and sell the little squares. I don't want to do that because I like the wax.
So you mentioned the egg example, there's some down there.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, you probably won't see any eggs on those. Those are empties.
You know, I think you have to have like 10 acres or a certain quantity.
It
Do you have to
depends.
have that for bees too?
Yeah, it depends on the county.
Oh.
It's different by county and it's different how much you can get by county. It's really weird.
Hmm.
But usually around 5 plus your homestead is what I've seen. And you can save a lot.
Yeah.
Placement of the hives. I've seen people where they put them out in the sun,
Mhm.
and I've seen other places where they have them shaded under trees. And they're all raised also, because they want to get them off the ground. I guess the first question is, what is proper placement? Second question is, do fire ants get into these hives also?
Yes, so the question is hive placement. The general wisdom is that they should be in full sun, facing south. That makes the morning sun hit the entrance and the afternoon sun hit the entrance, which gives you maximum bee awake time because they wake up with the temperature. If it's too cold, they just stay inside, so they kind of base their day on how warm it is. And the fire ants definitely is a thing. I have had ant problems with my hives and have lost a few, so I've 3D printed myself a solution. We'll find out if it works, but effectively it's a little bee moat with a stand that sits inside the moat, and I'll fill it with oil and put that as like feed under all my hives, because yeah, we've had quite an ant problem. And I don't know how they stop ants normally in nature. Bees do seal their hives. It's kind of interesting. They go out to trees and they bring sap back, and they plug all the holes of their hive up with just bee spit sap mixture called propolis, which is another bee product that people like to have. So you can scrape propolis off of your hives and put that in a tincture, and people want that for some reason. A lot of bee health stuff that everyone thinks the bee venom. There are people that think the bee venom is a health thing. So there's these guys at the bee club that have arthritis, and he was complaining that his bees were not aggressive enough, so he goes to Shirley's house because her bees are angry, and he can reach in there and get stung, and his arthritis feels better for a couple weeks. All right.
Okay, has there been any real problem with all the cold snaps that we have, like 2 weeks worth of
So,
freezing temperature?
yeah, bees are originally a European bug, well, African, and then we have the European version here. They were brought over on the Mayflower, so they're actually way more cold tolerant than most people would think. Some people will insulate their hives. They will wrap them in the winter. I think that's a northerner thing. I have not had any issue with cold. They weather a week of it with no problem. It's really those 2 month long, they're under a snowdrift sort of things that give them problems, I think. There are also hives that you can buy that are pre-insulated. They're a polystyrene injected sort of device. They're much more expensive than a wooden hive. But the R value of wood is 1. The R value of these things is like 15, I think. Like they just, and you would say, oh, well, it's hot here. Why would I do that? Well, insulation is 2 ways. And the bees regulate the temperature in the hive. They blow air in, they blow air out. That's one of the bee jobs, is to stand at the front, just fan air in and fan air out. So insulated hives can have a positive impact in that regard, I think, in Texas, because the heat definitely causes them some stress. They have to go get water, because part of the cooling is that they're actually making the swamp cooler, and they spit and they blow air over and they evaporate the water. So if it's really hot, they have to spend extra time working on the air conditioner.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions for me?
There used to be a problem, we used to call them with the killer bees. What effect has that had here in central Texas in that regard? Do you have to watch for that, or, because I know they can be aggressive and,
Yeah, so the killer bee is a Africanized bee which accidentally got released in Brazil in the 70s, I believe. And there was a guy who was experimenting on them because they're much more productive, actually. They make way more honey, but they're assholes. And they got out of containment and they started spreading, and they made their way up north, and they are absolutely here in Texas. If you have a queen and you let it free mate, and there's not a huge apiary around you of friendly bees, chances are she's going to find somebody that's got some Africanized genetics in them, and what you will end up with is spicy bees. And it's perfectly fine. They're not killers. They don't go out and hunt people down, but they are much more aggressive bees. So you're going to want your bee armor when you're in those hives, and there are some people that keep them on purpose. There are beekeepers that say, I am fine with the trade-off, I want that honey, they make more honey, they survive all the diseases, they keep all the wasps away, they don't succumb to skunks, which is the weird problem we have here, is skunks come up and like eat the bees. So yeah, they're a thing. And what I do is I buy my queens from the north, and I ship them here, and they're friendly queens. And if I have an angry hive, I will call the queen, and I'll replace it. And there's a procedure where you can actually insert a new queen in, and she will take the hive over with her pheromones. You put her in a little cage, and you hang her in the hive, and the other bees smell her. And at first they're trying to kill her, and then they're like, oh, well, we don't have a queen. Okay. And they let her out. There's this little sugar plug, and they eat and let her out, and she takes the hive over and replaces it with her genetics, because again, these bees only last 6 weeks. So after 6 weeks, your hive is not as spicy.
Have you noticed the color of your honey changing depending on the flowers that are around?
Yeah, we have a honey tasting every year at our bee club, and we had 30 entries or something like that, and they ran the gamut from almost clear to chocolate dark. One person, the guy that won, his honey tasted like cinnamon. He claimed he didn't put cinnamon in it, but he was at this senior center garden, and apparently it's very fruitful there. Yeah. Definite variation. If you could do a bee convention, there's almost always a honey tasting, and you can you get a little toothpick at each one, and you taste them, and you write down a score, and you can be a honey judge.
okay, cleaning up around them also, because if you have them in an open field, more than likely you're gonna have grass and everything that's gonna go around it.
Yes.
So when you're cleaning out there, do you use motorized implements, or do you just do it by hand, or how do you do
So what
that?
I do
How do you get
is
it done?
I get on Nextdoor and I beg for old rugs, old area rugs, and I put them out in my field, and they last 2 years, 3 years, and they just stop all the grass in that spot. And I put my hives on top of that. I do 3 center blocks in a row, and then just wood beams through the holes of the center blocks, and I just put my hives on that. I can do 4 hives on a center block row, and I just stick it on a carpet. And that has worked really well for me.
I don't wanna be the one around the beehives.
No, they hate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I go real fast. The other thing, so pro tip about approaching your beehives is they post guards at the front. They have no guards at the rear. So position your hives in such a way that you can approach them from the rear, work on them from the rear. If you're standing in front of the beehive while you work it, they will get angry, but the sides are okay. And I will go out there, no bee protection whatsoever. If I'm behind them, beside them, they'll let me know if I'm too close. They usually send a guard out, and they'll buzz by, maybe bounce off you. They won't sting you right off. It's only when you start bapping it, lifting it, that's when you get popped. Well, that's our hour, but happy to chat about bees. I've got no major agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.